Liz Cheney records herself in the book as being very surprised that Kevin McCarthy was lying to her on January 6th. Kevin McCarthy, a member of your California congressional delegation, someone you're very familiar with, has now decided to give up and leave the Congress. What will Kevin McCarthy's congressional legacy be?
Well, let me just say this, Lawrence, with all due respect to you, your program, and your audience, I'm not here to talk about him. What we have to do is talk about the future. They have placed our democracy in jeopardy. We have to make sure that it is saved and it is strong, that our flag is still there with liberty and justice for all. So I'd rather just say one election is over. Let's go on to the next one. It's almost, we're into the election year almost. Let's talk about what is at stake. When we talk about liberty, we talk about what is at risk. What is at risk? The Affordable Care Act. The former president already said that was his target. And that is important. People have to know when we talk about democracy being at stake, it's your freedom to have health care, to have, if you have pre-existing conditions, or not to have limits on the care that you can receive. That list goes on and on about a woman's health in terms of her reproductive freedom. So let's not talk about them. Let's talk about what comes next. Let's give people hope. We can read the books. They're wonderful. I highly recommend them. I'm writing one myself. I'm sure everyone who had anything to do with that day has a version of the story they would like to tell. But our version has to be about the future. That's what we were protecting, our democracy, our future, for the children. And again, when you think of what is at stake, today we had another shooting. And what you saw in the Senate was to not even allow a bill to come up to discuss it. Today, we lost Norman Lear, this beautiful man, a super patriot who fought for us in World War II, who fought for our liberty with the People for the American Way. He made us safe. He made us laugh. He made us better. So there's so much positive things, so many positive things that could be going on in our country, so many contributions that have been made. Let's not talk about what's his name's legacy might be. That's up to him to talk about, not me.
I have one more question for one more what's his name, which is your current successor as Speaker of the House, who says he wants to release the video, security video from the taken in the Congress on January 6th, but he wants to blur out the faces of everyone who was committing crimes.
No. Well, it's heartbreaking when you see what is happening there. And people should understand this is depriving them of the truth. And the truth is what will set us free. You have to know the facts of what happened. And why would he blur their faces? Because he knows it's an indictment on them to see their faces. It's just not right. And the impression that is given is that he's protecting them at the expense of the the law enforcement folks who are there to protect the Congress, the Capitol, the free and what the transition, the peaceful transition of government stood in the way of by these people. I heard that one of the debaters said it was an inside job. Is an inside job on the part of Donald Trump and his henchmen in the Congress of the United States.
What are the stakes for the world when they hear Donald Trump say that he will be a dictator on day one if he is elected president again? And what do dictators like Vladimir Putin hear in that statement?
Well, they hear a comrade in arms, but the fact is he's not going to win. And nothing less is at stake in this election than our democracy. And that democracy means your freedom to have access to health insurance, your own decision-making about your family's size and timing and the rest, your freedom to have education and read books that aren't banned, your ability to be who you want to be in this country. So democracy is a value, it's a principle, but it also translates to your kitchen table about the freedom you have to make your choices about how your family goes forward. And as far as dictators in other countries, they recognize what they see in the former president. They see somebody who shares their concern for disdain for the press. The press is the guardian of our democracy. On the First Amendment, freedom of the press tells the story of what's going on. Accountability, transparency in governance and in our society. But they want to suppress the press. They want to characterize it in a very negative way. I don't like the press I get, but that doesn't mean I don't like the press. And so sometimes I don't like it. So in any event, it is a message to those people that they have a kindred soul that was trying to crawl back into the White House, but we cannot let that happen. And I say that with all the respect in the world for the people who may have voted for the former president. But they have to make a decision about our democracy, our flag, our Constitution, the future of our children in a democratic state that is a model to the world. And when those Putinized people see such a thing, they take joy in it because they want us to not be the model